Hey everybody and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Steam Next Fest. You see, every time there's a Steam Next Fest, I love making a video on it, talking about my favorite games that have been found within it and so on. And today is no different. If you don't know what a Steam Next Fest is, essentially it is a event page on Steam with a bunch of demos on them. And you can go and play a bunch of demos from all of these upcoming games, some of them indie, some of them AAA. It really varies quite a lot, and I've picked out my favorite. And if you've spent any time on this channel, you know my taste in games is pretty big. I like a lot of different stuff. And today we're going to be looking at some of that different stuff. However, there's unfortunately one thing I have to talk with you about before that. Before we get started, I wanted to discuss the controversy that has sort of been surrounding this Steam Next Fest. You see, quite a few games have been made either partially or fully with AI during the Steam Next Fest. And that fucking sucks, man. It has become a real problem when you're trying to look for a cool game to try to vet whether or not it's AI. Partially because sometimes you see a cool game and then it ends up being AI. And partially just because it is very clearly taking spotlight and time away from actual games. Which is more often than not the issue that I find with it. There are just less eyes to go around if we're gonna clog up the channels with a bunch of AI slop. And that fucking sucks that that's something that has to be said. As far as I've been able to research, not a single game that I've featured in this video is AI. I've looked through the Steam page, I've looked through the comments, all of that sort of stuff, and as far as I can see, none of them are AI. I'm gonna attempt to not feature AI within this. It might happen, because they don't need to outright tell you anymore on Steam whether or not something was made using AI, and that is also a really stupid rule that should be a thing. But it isn't anymore, and that fucking sucks. I think this is super unfortunate, both for Steam Next Fest as an event, but also just for the developers who are actively participating within Steam Next Fest. Why is it that we can't have an event like this where we don't include AI generated games or anything like that at all and just celebrate the real developers' real hard work and their real artistic skills in an environment where more people can get their eyes on their thing? I think that is sort of where I have a bit of an issue, because these AI games will inevitably draw attention away from the very real developers who are making very real and very unique and cool games, who will just never be discovered because there's a sea of AI slop here now. Like I said, none of the games I've featured have been made with AI as far as I'm aware of. If you're interested in checking any of them out, link in the description. Now let's get into the games. Up first we have Snapjaw. What the fuck is Snapjaw, you might ask? Well, in the simplest terms, it's a fishing game. In a little bit more concrete term, it's a roguelike game that is set in a post-apocalyptic world after we have broken the 11th commandment and created artificial life, where God in response wept and his tears unleashed a second great flood. And it is now your goal to feed the life that we created through your fishing. And in doing so, you are also trying to get to the heavens to find your dog. It is a lot of things, but it is incredibly fun to play. You see, normally I'm not a big roguelike gamer, but Snapjaw manages to sort of do a really nice balance where you get pretty powerful pretty fast. What do I mean by powerful, you might ask, since this is a fishing game? Well, with powerful I mean that you might have your fishing rods on your ship have 2 lines. You might have a better chance at catching better fish. You see, there's a quota that you gotta meet every single day, and the rarity of the fish, the weight of the fish, and all of that matters in meeting said quota. And you can get different upgrades that go away when you die, but you can get different upgrades to help you reach that goal. It is actually pretty fun. You see, it is not just about fishing, it's also about avoiding the life that we have created. And that includes a lot of different murder robots. And I really don't have a better name for them. There are these mosquito robots that'll be flying around above ground, and if they spot you, they'll call upon an octopus to try to take your ship down. You can technically take these down. You have an harpoon. However, you only start out with 3 harpoon shots. And as you play, you can find more, although I found that they are quite rare. You also have this spot that essentially comes up if you're speeding for too long. You see you need to move your boat around to different fishing locations, and if you're moving too fast, well, one of these balls might come up and essentially give you this game's version of a speeding ticket. That is a shit ton of bullet directly into your ship, destroying the whole of it and ending your run. Now, of course, fishing isn't the only thing you're thinking about either. While these robots are a threat, you also need to find fuel, which are these purple things that you can see in your radar, and when you swim over them, your ship automatically gets fueled up. Now, that is not at all the end of it. You can also find these random crates. Crates might have different upgrades for your ship that can help you doing that run. They can also have metals that you can use to buy permanent upgrades, or alternatively, they might be filled with explosives and instantly kill you when you open. It's not a very fair game at times, and I have had times where I die a lot to the explosive crates because I just didn't see them in my speed running around trying to catch as many fish as I possibly can. But it is fun. I really enjoyed my time with the game a surprising amount, way more than I thought I would. And part of that is because the world and the atmosphere that you are in are really, really good. And it goes without saying, when there's good atmosphere, it kind of tends to immerse you. And with atmosphere, I mean the sound design, I mean the environment that you are in. Of course, like with everything else, it requires giving a little bit of you to the game, allowing you to get immersed in the world. But if you just, allow that, if you allow yourself to sink into the low rhythm of the background music, the humming of your boat, the colors that you're swimming around in, there is really something here that I quite enjoy. And I think it's a truly unique game. I've never really seen a roguelike take this approach before, even though there are certainly games that have taken a somewhat close approach, such as Pacific Drive, where you drive a car around in this post-apocalyptic land, and it sort of reminds me of that, except you're on a boat and you're fishing, and there's also killer robots, and also the giant robot that you're feeding might end up killing you if you don't get out of its way fast enough. It looks like one of the worms from Dune. It is a really good game. There are different maps within the demo. The two that I played on was this city map and sort of an industrial island-ish looking map. I didn't get the industrial island map too much, but I did get the city map quite a bit. And honestly, I just love the environment. The giant statues falling down, like almost being a sign of our own hubris and all that. I think it's really cool, and I think it's pretty well done in terms of like storytelling. The fishing itself is fairly simple. You have these auto fishes that you just set, like you just start them, and then you run over them, and then there's a little mini game to like reel in the fish, which amounts to you having to hold in WASD at like the right direction for a certain amount of time. It's not super difficult or anything, fairly self-explanatory once you get to it, but it is, like I said, fun. I also like the fact that the game isn't shying away from being a little silly. Before you start each run, you can kiss a picture of your dead dog. You can also go to the deep net, the game's version of the dark net, where you can buy the different perma upgrades. I like this sort of thing. I think it grounds the world a little bit, and I think that's honestly just kind of nice. Snapjaw truly did surprise me, and while I do have the one note that I wish that the explosive rates were marked a little bit better, because I usually grab them while I'm doing something else, so I don't quite pay attention to the crates that I'm picking up. That is ultimately a skill issue and an issue on my part. That is not a fault of the game. It is really fun, and I'm genuinely looking forward to the full release. I'll be checking this one out, and I've linked it in the description. Up next we have Memoirium. Memoirium is a sleep-focused Souls-like. Yeah, that sounds weird, and it's about to get really weird. The game looks a little strange, I won't lie, but I kinda enjoy it. Very low poly, but it gets its theme and its ideas across pretty well. You see, this is a dream-focused Souls-like. That is to say that, yeah, there are parts of this game that'll get a little creepy, but there are also just some that are straight up bizarre, where the world is just chipped together in weird ways. But I genuinely tended to enjoy this quite a lot. From a combat perspective, you have all of your usuals. You have your dodge roll, you have your jumping and all of that, but the one that you will be relying on is the parrying system. You see, this is less of a Dark Souls type of game and more of a Sekiro type of game, which if you know me, that is no problem. I love myself some good old Sekiro. And I will stand by that here. I think the game is fairly good in what it does, even though there are definitely moments where I was thinking a little bit of the what the fuck am I doing here type of feel. Partially because very much like the concept itself of being dream focused, this game is weird. You might, instead of getting a one-handed sword, find a like loot and like beat people up with the like loot. You can also find a rake and beat people with that. It is so strange to have all of these somewhat usual options, but then, you know, you use them as a weapon. But it's not just limited to yourself. Even the enemies' weapons are things like throwing teddy bears and like night lamps at you. And on top of that, you have your own bedroom to decorate, and you can decorate it however you like, including putting the bed on the wall and leaving it there if that's what your heart desires. You can do a lot of really crazy things with that, and I think when the game fully releases, hopefully you can do a lot more, because I genuinely kind of enjoyed it. Like the entire like building your own house system and whatever, that was kind of cool. I didn't expect it, and I loved it as a sort of build your own bonfire type of situation. Now, that is not the only thing that makes this game stand out a little bit. This is definitely one of those games where you will be wanna reading all the items that you get. You see, a lot of the different armor that you might have, while it might not have a like large different in terms of the bonuses it gives you, there's a little bit of text at the bottom that'll describe a different perk. Now, some of these perks can be genuinely game-changing. Towards the end of the demo, you'll be fighting this boss. It's in the second area, it's the last boss of that area, and I was struggling with him, and I genuinely mean it. And that is because the arena is like put up in this way where there are 6 pillars that if you get close to, they'll throw this attack out at you that essentially freezes your character for a few seconds where you can't move, and that really fucked with me. But if you put that helmet on, the enemy, like the big boss that you're fighting, his attacks will be slower because you'll be blinding him with your blinding light. It is a cool little idea, and I kinda enjoyed it, but it is overall a super interesting game. The combat feels surprisingly fluid for the most part, especially once you get into the nitty-gritty of parrying and so on. But you won't just be parrying. You see, this game has those systems where you have like a different symbol appear on the enemy. It can be purple, that means it's a jump attack and you'll have to jump over that attack. But there's also one that is gray where you have to roll into the enemy, which stuns him, and the blue one can only be parried unless you can like walk around it. It also has to be said that this game is on the slower side, and it is kind of unique to have a game that is focused around a stress meter be slow. And I don't quite hate it, honestly. I kind of find it nice. Oh, right. You don't have stamina in this game, you have stress instead. And yeah, that's because it's dream focus, you get it. I honestly, I just thought it was a pretty cute and fun detail. On top of that, I really, and I mean genuinely, like the magic system. You have these lullabies that you can equip, and when you throw them out, they do different things. The one that I tended to use either made my weapon into an ice, like guitar loot type of thing, and then I'd hit the enemy with that, or alternatively, it would shoot out this wave of thing at the enemy. I kind of really enjoyed it. A little bit too much maybe even. I think it was a pretty good system, and I think it serves the purpose well. You see, you do have a mana bar that will get filled up as you use your spells, but once you've used enough, you will either take damage from using them or you'll be debuffed. And you can get the debuff off you by attacking, by being aggressive, by pushing the enemies. It sort of all feeds back into the combat loop, and I just think it was really fun to play. It's another one that I really can't wait for the release of, and that is partially also because the art style is just so fucking cool and weird and strange, and I love it. I really don't know how else to put it. It's just a strange game overall when it comes to its visual art style, but I really quite like it. I like this sort of low poly, almost pre-PlayStation 1 early 3D era graphics quite a lot. And yeah, let's move on to the next one. Here we have Bonehold. Bonehold is made by the same developer who made Verho, which you might remember as being one of those games I won't shut the fuck up about. And that is because Verho is great. So when I saw Bonehold, I was initially really excited. Then my excitement was slightly dampened when I found out it was a roguelike because, like I've said, not a big fan of the genre. But I decided to give the demo a try anyway, and boy oh howdy am I happy that I did. Because you see, Bonehold effectively translates like this dungeon crawler style into being a roguelike, and it does it in a way that doesn't feel super bad or overly punishing. I will say the game's difficulty might honestly even be a little bit on the easier side with the fact that I ended up completing the entire demo on my first run. But that is not a big issue because of course this is just a demo and it probably gets a lot more difficult as you go. But secondly and more importantly, the game is fun as shit, man. Like genuinely, this is really fun. There's some really good stuff in here. And I really want to be able to say more about it, but if you've played Verho, you know exactly what you're getting. It's a dungeon crawler, it's slow paced. You have this time 2 weapons that you can charge at the same time, so you can be dual wielding, which yes, is about as broken as you would imagine it, as you can have a magic staff and a sword, and then you can charge both up to the full heavy attack power, and then you can use them at the same time, either instantly killing an enemy or doing a shit ton of damage. I also noticed that building into one thing just tends to be a good way to be playing. Like, I ended up at least not struggling while doing that, and I mainly built into maging and being a mage because that just seemed pretty powerful. I got a ring that would regenerate my mana as I went. There's also a lot of stat play in this game. Like, this is sort of the one where you get plus 30% extra range damage or whatever the fuck. And then you also get a little perk at the bottom. Honestly, not a bad idea. I just kind of really enjoyed it. I also very much like the design being less voxel and more like drawn and like 2D sprites that are put into these 3D layers. I think it's kind of charming. I kind of like it, I'll be honest. The one thing that I can say about the visual design that I might not find as appealing, and that is probably mostly a me thing, is just like the general area you are in, like the walls being a little cartoony and all that. Not a big fan of it personally, but I don't really mind it. This is also the sort of roguelike where you will have a few things to manage other than your health, such as a literal hunger bar. Yep, while you're exploring this dungeon as a zombie that has been reborn by an evil necromancer, your character will deadass be like, yeah, you know, I'm feeling kind of peckish right now. Strange shit, but like, it isn't that big of a deal, although I did have one point on my run where I was starting to struggle with the hunger bar, but that very quickly was resolved when an enemy dropped me some food. Overall, I really liked the game, and I do wish there was a little bit more to combat, as it seemed to be very much like the usual Kingsfield-like or dungeon crawler in general, where you can do a lot of just walk directly backwards to avoid all damage. It worked on the final boss of the demo as an example, and worked on almost every enemy before that. And if you can't do that, then you usually cheese them by just dodging a little bit backwards. It's like not super difficult in that regard, and it's not that it needs to be difficult, it's just that it feels a little cheesy. That's like basically all there is to it. But overall, I think Bonehold is really, really good. I think it's one of the roguelikes that have genuinely caught my interest, and probably one that I'll sort of try to get into the genre with. Partially because I like the developer, and partially because I think the game is really, really fucking solid. I like the writing, I like the world that it's set in, I like the combat style, I like the exploration, and that is very relevant given that you are gonna be walking around exploring quite a lot in a game like this, and it also has this procedural thing going on where you sometimes might encounter like these extra dungeons, so to speak, that will hold a little bit of loot and all of that. You want to go down there and explore, and there's an upgrade system for your character where you can upgrade your character's base stats to do more damage so you can get further in future runs. And there seems to be multiple classes that might be unlockable. I'm not quite sure on that, but I do know you go over and like buy a class at the beginning of the demo, although you can get anything else. I would be kind of surprised if there's like a starter class or like other starter classes that you can unlock somehow throughout the game. But in general, really looking forward to Bonehold. Very much looks to be up my alley. And while I'm kind of surprised by it, I'm very happy with it. And yeah, let's get on to the next one. Up next, we have Divine Frequency. Now, this game caught my attention due to multiple reasons. For one, I think the entire art style just looked really good. I like the fact that it has this weird thing where the gun you're holding actually looks like a PNG that's just been pixelated, and the rest of the world does look like a game. I love that sort of entire style. But more so than that, one thing that I really sort of liked, or one thing that really caught my attention, I should say, is the description on Steam. You see, under the description tag, it says the following: a bewildering tale of a trash can hobo's rise to becoming the universe's most effective security software. Yeah, it is about as strange as it sounds. I have no idea how to explain the story of this game because I don't understand it whatsoever. If you go down to the story section on Steam, it says that you're invited to the seat at the world's consciousness, but first you have to get out from whatever hole your body is in. Look, man, I don't fucking know. I really don't. But it is pretty fun to play, and there's actually quite a lot here to like. For one, the guns feel in general pretty good to shoot. It is classic survival horror in the sense that, yeah, this game actually for once genuinely spooked me sometimes while playing, and it is that sort of thing where you have to manage your inventory, you don't have too many resources, and at almost all times I was close to being dead or close to being out of ammo. Like, it has managed to hit that sort of level where, especially early on, resource management is actually a bit of a challenge, and that's kind of nice to see, as I feel like a lot of survival horror games in the modern era just tend to not do that at all. Resource management become a non-issue, and it's sort of a bit of a shame, and I'm scared that later on in the game we might end up with something similar here with Divine Frequency. However, through playing the demo, I strongly believe that that might not be a risk here, and that is mainly because even through the entire demo, which is not particularly long, but still I was on that edge of either not having ammo or health the entire time, and I think that's a good place to be. It's not that the game is quote-unquote hard, it is just balanced around you not constantly having a lot of resources. It's not necessarily a power fantasy as much as it is survival horror, and I think that is pretty good. I have to admit as well, I love the fact that the game is so surreal. It is strange to look at times, and some of the effects that you will see are genuinely weird. The game starts out by asking you like what class essentially you want to play, and one of them is literally you not existing, like you feel nothing, you are nothing, and it like makes the game a lot harder. Like there's certain things that you can't use, but then you can like consume the corpses of your enemies or something like that. It's strange shit, but it is really cool, and all of it is lifted up by the genuinely cool design of the rest of the game. And what I mean by that is that the corridors that you run through, at least early on, are all pretty good. Some of them are kind of maze-like and get you sort of lost, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that is fully intentional. And then sometimes you end up going the right direction, and all of a sudden you're being chased with a guy with like a fucking meat cleaver. It is scary and weird a lot of the times, and I really enjoy that part about it. Like I said, I enjoy things that sort of are weird for me. That's something that I personally enjoy playing, something that I haven't necessarily experienced before. And Divine Frequency is a game that I gotta admit I've never played anything like. And I think that alone sort of lifts it up for me. The fact that I can't really just neatly place it and be like, it's like that other thing. Divine Frequency seems to be entirely its own thing, and I am super interested in finding out exactly what that thing is when it comes out. Here we have Deep Dish Dungeon. Deep Dish Dungeon is a first-person dungeon crawler in the styles of the old Kingsfield. We are so back, baby. And it also takes a little bit of inspiration from Dungeon Meshi. And what I mean by a little bit of inspiration is that this is a cooking-focused dungeon crawler. Now, what does that look like? What does that mean? Well, that basically just means that the game has a large focus around you cooking different foods to buff your character before you go out and explore more of the dungeon. Basically, you have a very low amount of health without eating, but if you eat, drink, and keep your character up, the usual survival game type of deal, then you get more health and it regenerates. Now, the kind of unique part for at least the dungeon crawler here is that you can play this co-op as well with up to 2 other people, but in my case, I was playing it all by my lonesome. And while there seems to be some co-op features set in there, like a broadcasting system within the game, so you could like call out to your friends while being at like your home camp, I didn't get to use them because I was playing by myself. So that you'll have to go and explore with you and your deep dish dungeon friends. In my case though, I gotta say, even for a single player experience, this game was extremely good. Fair warning, I am a big lover of dungeon crawlers, especially these first-person exploration-heavy dungeon crawlers, but Deep Dish Dungeon genuinely is pretty good. Not only do I love the visual style and the idea of exploring these underground ruins, I find it super fascinating, and it's also why, if you like this sort of thing, the idea of going into a dungeon and cooking and whatnot, watch Dungeon Meshi if you haven't. Really good, highly recommend. But in terms of the game, the dungeon is so fucking cool. I would love to know more about who created it, why it's there, what happened to it, all of that, and I hope there's gonna be some answers to it. On top of that, I genuinely gotta be honest, exploring the dungeon is fun. Just straight up, and that is partially because you have this ability to pick up planks or boxes and barrels and that sort of thing and place them different places around the area, so you can like solve the puzzles by just placing different objectives. As an example, one of the things that the game sort of does at the very beginning of the demo, or like the midpoint of the demo, it's pretty short, is that there is this plank that you can take and then you can place it as being like a bridge so you can cross another area. Another way that I used objects around me to solve a puzzle was that I used it as a little place to jump from. Like there's this point where you drain some water out of a sewer system, and then I threw down a barrel in there, and then I lifted the barrel up or the box up so I could use it as a place to jump up, and then I can jump from there and all the way up to the top again, which allowed me to transport resources, because the inventory in this game is fairly limited. It is probably the biggest issue if you are playing by yourself, is that you have that like this limited inventory, but if you're playing co-op, I don't think it's gonna be that much of an issue. However, to sort of help with that, there are pouches in the game. I didn't get to craft one, but they are there, and on top of that you have chests. You see, this game has an entire separate side that isn't just cooking, exploring, and combat. It also has an entire crafting menu where you can design and build up your little own camp. And yes, you can break that camp down again when you have to eventually move to the next layer of the dungeon. I think this is a really nice detail, quite frankly, that I sort of didn't expect, but it kind of almost gives it a homey feel to have your little camp with your little campfire in it and your pots and cooking ware and everything. Really fucking nice. I love the feel of just sort of building it up. And I mentioned combat, and while combat is very rudimentary in a lot of these dungeon crawlers, and unfortunately Deep Dish Dungeon, as far as I can tell, so far isn't that different in that regard, it's not something I mind personally. That is a discussion you need to have with yourself. But the combat is essentially just you hit an enemy and then walk a little bit backwards, avoid his hit, then walk back to him again, hit him again, and then you just do that loop until he's dead. Not the most complex thing in the world, and I'm sure there are probably other strategies, but I don't really mind it if I'm being completely honest. To me, it's still really fun. I really like this game, and I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing it. I want to explore the dungeon more. I want to see more of what this game sort of have to offer in general. Because what I've found so far is a game where the puzzles can at times be a little challenging. Maybe that's because I'm an idiot, but I struggle with at least one of them. And it has this interesting premise of like cooking and keeping yourself sustained in a dungeon that I really enjoy, that I don't see being done too much. So yeah, I'm gonna be all over this when it finally releases. Shrimp game OVERKRILL is either one of the best games or just one of the strangest games I've ever played during a Steam Next Fest. You play as a shrimp, or a submersible hydrodynamic research integrated marine platform, who has the ability to choose from multiple different elements to infuse into your shrimp that change the way you play and what magic you can use. You see, your job as a shrimp is to go to other worlds to collect their cores, or their souls essentially, to bring them back to your own to sustain your own ecosystem. But to do that, you'll have to not only pick your element, but also pick which shrimp you want to play as there are multiple different shrimp, and the shrimps all have different effects and stats and so on. And there is a bit of a learning curve to some of the shrimp. As an example, I ended up playing as a fat tanky shrimp, whereas somebody might also have chosen another shrimp that is much faster. But that's not all there is to Shrimp Game. Of course, the gameplay is really fucking cool. I love the world design, I love the areas, I love the boss fights for the most part, except the final one. He was a piece of shit. Not in a bad way, I also enjoyed that one, to be fair. I like the game quite a lot, but one of the more underrated things that I haven't seen being discussed as much about it in the videos I've seen about Shrimp Game is just the area design, man. It feels like the box art of like a Lego set when you remove the logo and everything like that, like Lego Atlantis. It has this really cool vibe to it. It's super atmospheric. I genuinely really like it. And it is only helped by a soundtrack that is genuinely poppin'. It is straight up a club banger. Like, some of these soundtracks that you'll be hearing in the game are just genuinely fucking cool. And part of that is, I believe, at least due to one of the game's inspirations being Bob Bumble, which, in case you don't know, has a main menu soundtrack that sounds like this.
What about now? It's time to rock with the biggity buck bumble. What about now? It's time to rock with the biggity buck bumble. Bum to the bum to the bum to the bass. Bum to the bum to the bumble.
Now that you've been subjected to that, how exactly does Shrimp Game play? Well, you play as a magical shrimp underwater. You will be running around solving some puzzles around the map, which honestly all of them are pretty fun and somewhat easy to find out once you start using that little noggin of yours. But other than that, the combat itself is surprisingly smooth. From the different abilities you unlock to just straight up floating around the waters, fighting bosses and shooting, rooting, tooting, combining abilities and all of that good stuff, it feels incredibly fun to play. The different campaign missions follow a somewhat similar structure, at least as far as I got to play within the demo, and that is that you get somewhere, then you do some tasks that can be solve some puzzles or kill some enemies, then you get to infuse yourself after you've completed the first objective with another element, which unlocks your ultimate. And start this fusion that you can do where you might combine fire and earth, and then you create magma, which allows you to summon a volcano as your ult, and it changes your like special ability or other special ability to be stronger, and your dodge also gets a buff that's towards the end of the level. And then after that you get a boss fight, and the boss fights are for me the highlight easily. From a giant eel that is called the Eel God to a hermit crab, this game has fucking everything, and they're all fun to fight. I genuinely am a bit surprised by just how well this game plays, because it feels super smooth. You have a dodge roll that you can use on the shift button if you're on mouse and keyboard, and you can avoid some of the attacks with that. Otherwise, you have another sort of dodge or movement ability that each of the different like elements have their own variant of. As an example, I played a shrimp that used the dark element, and that one had a direct teleport to it. It's pretty fun and genuinely super unique. Personally, I am really looking forward to Shrimp Game OVERKRILL. It is really fun to play. I love designing my own shrimp. I love exploring the world. I love seeing it. I just want more. And the good news for me is that it is out on August the 20th. So I don't have to wait too long to experience more of Shrimp OVERKRILL. For the final game, to close off this video with, we have Mortal Shell 2. Mortal Shell 2 is a Souls-like in all the right ways. It is a third-person action game where you have this heavy feeling combat and you have to dodge the enemies or parry them, mostly parry them, and an incredibly satisfying combat system along with a genuinely super cool world that I am looking forward to exploring more of. So, before we get into actually talking about the game, I just want to say I haven't played Mortal Shell the first one, but after playing the demo, I will probably be going back at some point to experience that game as well. Because Mortal Shell 2 is genuinely fantastic. At least from what this demo shows, it has some incredible boss fights and highlights. Along with that, it just has a super interesting world to explore. I cannot understate it. I really like how this game doesn't feel as expansive as something like Elden Ring, like the zones themselves don't feel like that. However, they don't feel as tight as something like the first Dark Souls. It feels like it fits right in between those, where the zones are much more open and you have plenty of room for exploration without the zones being so overwhelmingly big it will take you multiple days to thoroughly go through one. And that's something that I really appreciate personally. I think it's fun to explore the game. There's always something new to find. There's always something to see, at least here within the demo. On top of that, I just absolutely fucking adore the combat. Like, I'm sorry, I can't keep it in anymore. I love how this combat system feels. You have your normal dodge ability, like you can roll around and all that, but you can also parry an enemy. And a parry essentially takes no stamina, and if done enough times, you'll eventually stun an enemy, allowing you to do a finishing attack, kinda like Sekiro, where you might either damage the enemy severely or outright kill them. And I cannot confirm whether or not this is overpowered, as in if it's intentionally like super strong, because it feels really strong. Like, for the vast majority of enemies, you either one-shot or two-shot them with it. It is fucking nutty, but it's also high risk. You gotta risk yourself being in the open to sort of get that guard break off. In my case, I played with the Infinity Augment that allowed you to have a shorter time to hit the perfect like block window or perfect parry window, and then when you hit that perfect window, you also gain more of the like stun bar on the enemy. But there are also other augments. You can also use one that freezes your entire body into stone so you can tank more attacks, which then fills it up slightly slower, or you have your default one where you block with your sword. And while all of that is cool, the thing that really sort of tops it for me is your sidearm. You see, in this game you have two weapons. You have your main hand that being a sort of like your melee weapon, and then you have a side weapon. That can be anything from a shotgun that you start out with to a lute, like a flute that you can play and whatnot. And on top of that, you also get a bow. And while I didn't get to play too much with the bow, I did play a fair bit for both the lute and the shotgun. And I have to admit, while you can't main these guns as they require a charge to be shot, which are refilled when you rest or when you hit enough melee attacks on the enemy, when you get to shoot them, they feel incredible, meaty and good. It's so cool to like use these weapons. Now, it has to be said, the most important thing with the lute is here. You can play on it. They have added different songs and tracks that you can play on the lute while either sitting down or just AFKing. And they didn't have to do that, but I fucking love it. I adore a feature like this that allows me to just sit down and relax within the game world. And Mortal Shell does that quite well for a game that is this otherwise grotesque. Because there's no other way to describe the look of the world other than straight up grotesque. Lovecraftian, if you will. A lot of the monsters are these like very bloated creatures. Some of them look like actual zombies, like they've been dead for years and then they've been bloated up. But quite frankly, my favorite enemy is the grandmas. Yes, you can fight the traditional Eastern European grandma in the little traditional hood, beating you with a broom. It is pretty funny, to be quite fair, but also just super satisfying because these grandmas actually are a bit of a pain to kill. I just in general really like the combat. Like, if you couldn't tell, I think almost every aspect of the combat is good. There is the only complaint that I could find being that I've experienced once now that the equivalent of souls, like your upgrade materials, just despawn when I died. And that's a little bit annoying. Normally that doesn't happen though. So that was clearly a bug and clearly unintentional. But otherwise the game is fucking fantastic. The world itself is really cool to explore as well. There's a lot of different things that you can find with every bonfire or this game equivalent of bonfires. You have this option to cleanse them, which takes you into an optional dungeon that you can fight through to get different rewards, and sometimes there's a boss at the end, sometimes there isn't. It's really fucking cool regardless. I really like that sort of optional dungeons and whatnot, and in my opinion they are done a little bit better than Elden Rings because they don't feel so sluggish. You see, these dungeons are short and quick, at least within the demo. They are pretty fun to play through. I played all of them and I enjoyed all of them universally. There's not one that I felt like was, too long or anything like that. I feel like these hit a good spot of yeah, you know that they're kind of samey, but because they're so short, it doesn't really matter. Like, okay, it's 5 minutes, man. Like, I'm not gonna complain about, you know, a 5-minute thing being done a few times. It is what it is. I also really like the shell mechanic, the thing that the game, funnily enough, is named after, which is that you can pick up different corpses, not that you find, but there are a set amount of them that you can like find, and they have their own unique story, and you can essentially play with them and play as them, and they give you like different moves. The one you find at the demo, as an example, is a thief who has the ability to cloak himself and then go behind enemies to get a free hit in, like a free backstab hit. It's pretty powerful and honestly a really fun class to play. You also play as a knight within the demo, who has the ability to turn himself into stone. Like, there are a lot of cool shells, it seems, and I'm really looking forward to get to find more of them within the full release. Because honestly, I think Mortal Shell might be one of those games that I will need to get as soon as I can as well. Mortal Shell 2 just completely fucking slaps. I love this demo quite a lot. I think the bosses are really cool design-wise. I think they look really cool. I think the combat and like finding them most is really cool, with the exception of the final boss, who has a really annoying tendency to throw 2 back-to-back unparryable attacks, which irritates me. You know, that's just a personal pet peeve, a skill issue if you may, but overall the game is just really solid. And if you're on the fence with Mortal Shell as a whole, like I were, then go and play Mortal Shell 2's demo. It's genuinely worth your time. It's quite a long demo as well, so you can get a full impression of the like product that you are gonna be buying if you end up buying it. Very well worth checking out. And yeah, that sort of ends it for now. While we have talked about the problems that Steam have been having with the entire nextfest, with the fact that there are a lot of games that are just blatantly AI now, overall I'd say that the Steam nextfest has been pretty good. I hope you found something that you can enjoy. And if not, I hope you at least found something that was interesting enough to give a try. Regardless though, I hope you enjoyed yourself here tonight. And if you did, please do the YouTube stuff, you know, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. But just have a good day ahead of you, man. It's rough out there. Have fun, and I'll be seeing you later. Bye.